So, as of last night, it is official that we are going to end up getting a LA Clippers versus Dallas Mavericks first round playoff series. Now, whoever has home court advantage, that is still up in the air. We have to see how these last couple of games of this season are going to end up rounding out for both teams. But a very intriguing matchup. This is like the third time in the last 5 years we've got these two matching up in the playoffs against each other. The first couple of times, really every single time they've matched up, Luka Doncic has extremely dominated the Clippers defense. And it's so funny because the first time we saw him do it, it was just his second year, and the Clippers had so many great individual defenders to throw at him. Three of some of the best individual defenders in the NBA at that time, with Patrick Beverley, with Paul George, and with Kawhi Leonard, and they just couldn't figure it out. And that's been the way every time they've matched up. The Clippers have not been able to figure out how to guard Luka Doncic. And this time they're matching up with Luka Doncic alongside with Kyrie Irving. So that's going to be super, super interesting to see how that Clippers defense is going to adjust. It's been pretty weak as of late. And on the other hand, the Mavericks defense has been amazing. And if you would have told me at the beginning of the season that the Clippers would be skidding defensively heading into the playoffs while the Mavericks would be trending up defensively, I would have told you that you'd be lying. The Mavericks have so many great individual defenders. If it's Derrick Jones Jr., if it's guys like Josh Green, if it's guys like Maxi Kleber, if it's guys like Daniel Gafford, even, who's done a great job of not only protecting the paint, but also getting out there and defending well on switches. We saw him do that last night against the Miami Heat at a very high level. Even Dante Exum, who is having this amazing career revival. They've got so many guys who are contributing at a very high level on the defensive end. Luka's giving a lot more effort defensively too, and so is Kyrie. Last night against against Miami, he had some pretty good moments on that end. So it's a really interesting dynamic between these two teams. On one hand, you have this Clippers team that's in championship or bust mode, and on the other hand, you have this Mavericks team that's working on getting over the hump, right? Working on making that first finals appearance in the Luka Doncic era. And you have Luka, who's looking to solidify himself as the best player in the league. If he wins a title this year, which is very possible given how great the Mavericks have been playing, given their roster makeup, given their talent, then we'd have to consider him in that conversation. And if you look at the way the league has been like the last 5 seasons, whoever the last title winner is, whoever the last finals MVP is, he ends up being considered as the best player in the NBA. 2019, Kawhi Leonard wins a title. We consider him as the best player in the league. 2020, LeBron wins it, and he's back at the top of our mind as the best player in the league. Then we have 2021. Giannis wins his first, and he's the best player in the league. 2022, Curry wins his fourth, wins his first finals MVP, and he's at the top of the helm as the best player in the NBA. And as things stand, Nikola Jokic wins his title last year, and we look at him as the best player in the league. So with Luka, if he wins a title, he'll be right in that conversation. That's just how up and down that conversation of the top player in the league has been over the last few seasons. And for Kyrie, it's like this perfect career revival moment, right? We haven't seen him make a super, super deep playoff run in a very, very long time, really since his days in Cleveland. And since then, he's played for what? 3 different teams: Boston, Brooklyn, and now this Mavericks team. So it's an opportunity for Kyrie to return to that NBA final stage and remind us that when he gets to that stage, he plays at a very high level. We say so many things about Kyrie. Oh, he's this great player. He's the most talented player of all time. We also forget he has done all of this. He has brought this talent to the biggest stage possible. He's performed in what I think is the biggest NBA Finals win of all time in that 2016 series with the Cavs going against the Warriors. So very interesting dynamic for that Dallas Mavericks squad. And like I said, for the Clippers, this is a championship or bust year. Let's think about how the last, let's say 10, 12 years have gone for the Clippers. So there's the Chris Paul Lob City era, right? Where they have one of the 5 most talented rosters in the league. There's Chris Paul, there's Blake Griffin, there's DeAndre Jordan. There's like a revolving door of role players, guys like JJ Redick and guys like that. You have a couple of really good coaches, Vinny Del Negro, and then after that, there's Doc Rivers, and no Western Conference Finals appearance. So you're a really talented group, but no super deep, substantial playoff run to show for it. And when that era comes to an end, there are a couple little empty years here and there. And then you bring in Kawhi Leonard, who, as I said, at that time was considered the best player in the NBA, was considered a top 5 defensive player, and considered the best two-way player in the league. And also Paul George, another guy who's considered as one of the best two-way players in all of basketball. Not only that, but amazing role players: Patrick Beverley, Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell. That was a team that was built to win an NBA championship. And that first season, They end up choking big time in the second round against a Denver Nuggets team who at that time they should have beaten 100%. And then the years following that, there was an injury that caused them to make a Western Conference Finals appearance, but they were outmatched by the Suns. Kawhi was out with a very mysterious ACL injury. There was 2022, and then there was 2023. Nothing to show for it at all. So far, the Kawhi Leonard, Paul George Clippers era is reminiscent of the Chris Paul, Blake Griffin Clippers era. So much talent and some injuries. And as I said, nothing at all to show for it. I'm not going to chalk it all up to injuries, right? Because there have been opportunities for this team to do more than what they've already done. Case in point, 2019. That team should have been way better. They should have been matching up against the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals. Now, would they have beaten the Lakers in that series? That's up for debate, right? It was really back and forth throughout the regular season between those two teams. I think they split a regular season match. No, I think they were 2-1. The Lakers were over them in the regular season. 3-1, because also counting the bubble, I think the Lakers beat him as well. So it would have been an interesting series. They weren't a lock to win that because LA was on an entire different level, or the Lakers in particular were on an entirely different level. But this Clippers team, outside of the health issues, has had their opportunities. So this year seems like the year. Not only do they have Kawhi and Paul George, but they also have James Harden, who's one of the best offensive players of all time. Is he in his prime? No. But still, that's a lot more talent than they've ever had. This is the most talented Clippers roster, maybe of all time. And guys aren't hit with injuries a ton. I know Kawhi's been hurt over his last few, but this has been the most healthy from a regular season standpoint he's been in a very long time. Paul George, too, very healthy, made an all-star game this year, playing at a very high level. Russell Westbrook has been pretty solid off the bench. Norman Powell is a really good contributor. Ivica Zubac is a really good contributor, and we'll see how effective he is on the floor, given how much Dallas is like to hunt him in pick-and-roll situations every time they match up. So the talent is here for this Clippers team. As I said, this is the most talented they've been in a very, very long time. I would argue the most talented Clippers roster of all time, as I said a couple of minutes earlier. So they need to win it. This year it can't be marked by just a deep playoff run. It can't be marked by just a Western Conference Finals appearance. It's got to be a championship level year. Point blank, period. Too much talent, too much upside, great coaching to go alongside with this talent. The excuses for this team are very, very limited. Only way that we look at this season as a failure, or we don't look at the season as a failure if they end up getting out early in the playoffs, is if they get hurt again. Now, I know last year they got hurt, right? They were in the playoffs. Paul George was out. Kawhi was out. But as I said, they have had their opportunities before and just have not been able to take advantage. So this year, it is championship or bust. I think they're on like the same plane right now as the Boston Celtics, where we've seen them make these deep playoff runs. We've seen them show a ton of promise through the regular season, but they get to the playoffs and nothing to show for it at all. Now, the Boston Celtics have gotten deeper than the Clippers. They did make a finals appearance, but still, this year for these two teams, we need to see them win a title. Flat out, point blank, period. The way that these two teams have been the last couple of years with the talent they've had, we better be seeing these two match up in the NBA Finals. That's how it has to go. Now, I know the Celtics, their situation has been different. They haven't been faced with as many injuries that the Clippers have over the last couple of years. But as I said, I'm not going to give the Clippers every excuse in the world with that injury thing because they have had their opportunities multiple times. So this is going to be a very, very interesting matchup in the first round. Right now, the Clippers defense has been skidding, and the Mavericks defense has been on an uphill trend. So let's see how that Clippers defense is able to adjust. Can they turn it on that end to try to deal with what has been arguably the best 1-2 punch in the NBA? It's been Luka and Kyrie, probably the best right now. I'd have to say, since we saw them win a title with each other last year, Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic have been at the top of that combo. But right next to them is Luka and Kyrie. They play so well off each other, and their role players execute. Guys hit their shots. They attack closeouts. Daniel Gafford is an amazing finisher around the rim. And I like their depth. That's also one thing they have over the Clippers right now is better depth. Josh Green's now coming off the bench. Derek Lively is really, really productive coming off the bench as well. They're really, really solid contributors all around. Dante Exum, he's been in the rotation late in games, and we saw him earlier this week hit a game-tying bucket to send the game into overtime. So not only do they have this great core, but their role players have been probably some of the best role players in the league this year. They probably have the best core of role players right now. I'm trying to think of teams that we could say are better from a role player standpoint. You could say the Celtics. The Celtics are probably one right now in that conversation. And I think that's probably it. I think the Dallas Mavericks role players, their non-star guys, have been as productive as any other set of role players in the league right now. That's another advantage that they have against this Clippers group. I also like their size. So thing with Dallas is you can't really play Daniel Gafford off the floor unless he gets in foul trouble. You could play Ivica Zubac off the floor. Daniel Gafford is really good when he's guarding in pick and rolls and guarding in space and guarding smaller players. Not as much with Ivica Zubac. So if you force the Clippers to go small, this is a Mavericks team that can still play a big guy against a small ball lineup. And we know what happens there. They can take advantage. So let's see how things end up turning out for the Clippers. I'm really interested to see what adjustments they end up making, especially from a defensive perspective. We'll see if Kawhi and PG are able to kind of flip that switch and turn back into all-world defenders, which they showed flashes of throughout the course of the season. But in this series, with the momentum they got, I like Dallas a lot. I really like this Mavericks team a lot. I feel like they know they have a lot to prove. I feel like their top two guys, for different reasons, have a ton to prove as well. There's a major chip on their shoulder. Luka knows what's at stake, right? Even if he doesn't win the MVP award, he still, by the end of all of this, can end up being considered as the best player in the world. He's had the talent to do it. We've wanted to say it, but we all know that in order to have that title, you've got to win an NBA championship. There's that. And then, like I said, for Kyrie, on the other hand, there's this veteran who's looking to get back at the top of the mountain, who's been very, very productive, playing at a very high level. I think has been on the same tier offensively this season as Luka. He's got that as well, and a plethora of role players looking to solidify themselves with a championship as well. Dante Exum, right after being considered an NBA bust, has now reemerged and revived his career. A ring would be perfect for him. Daniel Gafford has kind of been this journeyman big guy over the course of his career, and he's finally in a situation where he can actually play for something meaningful. Being in Chicago, he wasn't playing for anything meaningful. Being in Washington, he for sure wasn't playing for anything meaningful. So there's a major chip on the shoulder for this Mavericks group. Jason Kidd is also trying to prove that he can be a championship level head coach. They have so much momentum and so much going for them right now. This Clippers group is very talented, but I think I'm going with Dallas winning this series, and I'd say 6 or 7. This isn't going to be a sweep. It's not going to go 5. It's going to be a pretty lengthy series. I hope we get a lot of really good games just because of how much talent we're dealing with between these two groups. But I like Dallas outing this Clippers team in the first round. And I think whoever ends up winning this series, this is the importance of this series and how competitive it is. I think whoever ends up winning this series is going to end up going to the Western Conference Finals. If you can take out the Clippers in the first round, or you can take out the Mavericks in the first round, you're good enough to make a deep run in the West and represent them in the Western Conference Finals for sure. That's the breadth of this particular matchup. That's the importance of this particular matchup. That's how much talent you're dealing with in this matchup. And that's why it's going to be super, super interesting to see how things end up rolling out by the end of this thing.